Hello, everybody. Okay, so I'm gonna do what I usually do when I get like a super amount of energy to leave a video, which is I'm just gonna start talking and see what comes out. And hopefully it comes out in a measured uh, manner. So I think I'm gonna go backwards, and hopefully I won't forget the first thing I was gonna say. So I've been thinking a lot about just racism not being real. I've actually been like chewing on that for like a couple of years now. I think it was like 2018 when I got this download, and it keeps getting more and more elaborate, especially with the political things that are going on right now. Um, it's just making me understand history better. And the thing about like here's the thing, here's what I believe about just knowing things. Epistemology, I guess is what you can call it. But the most authentic way I think of learning something or learning about the world, you should get to a point where not so much that you have so many letters behind your name and you've been to school so many times and you've been taught by the best, but like it should be where to the point where you understand this plane that we're on and this world that we're in to the point where you can start to predict the future. It's just like knowing a person. Or when someone tells you about something that happened in history and you can sort of fill in the rest when they're like, and you know what happened in the war of blah, blah, blah. And you can be like, let me guess. They like took all the gold and then like made everybody buy blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yes, that's exactly what happened. Like, how did you know that? It's like, that's where you want to be. That's where you want to get at. It's not so much like, oh, let's all learn the piece of the elephant. Like for me, it's about understanding. And understanding goes further than knowledge to me because you can, if something happens, it's not like, well, I don't know. Is there a precedent for this? It's like you understand. So anyway, so I'm thinking about history in this context, and I was thinking about just the political climate that we're in, and we see that there are people who just want to control, and it's hard to believe at first, but the more things get uncovered, the more you're like, okay, so this is real. Like, there's really a group of people who just want to control us. Like, it's hard to understand and it's hard to know what they're going to do because it's hard to get into their minds. But the more you see, it's like, okay, there's people that want to inject us with stuff and they want to experiment on us and they want to listen to everything that we say and do, and they want to listen to us through our devices, and they want to find out what we're thinking so they can sell us things, and then they eventually want to kill us all. Like, it's just weird. I don't know why they want to like eliminate the whole population and have us eating human meat and like all of these weird things. But after the evidence comes out, you can't deny it. So like politically, like there's it's not necessarily this side or that side, but I will say that largely there's one side that where people like that feel comfortable and at home, and they they just want to control everything that we do. They want to be in power no matter what. They will suppress people's votes, they will lie, they will cheat, they will steal. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. And so ultimately I think in this country we're really dealing with, yes, there's a one party system, there's one party and then another party. And I don't think it was always that way. I think what happened over time is that this tiny group, which was probably there from the beginning of the country, instantly, I mean, you think of like all the animosity. You got this tiny ragtag bunch of whatever starting a country that used to belong to the British. Like, yeah, the British are totally going to let that go. And like all the other countries that have a stake in America, they're totally like, good for you guys, go be free. Obviously, uh, there's been power grabs since the beginning. And I think over time, it has just morphed and become this sort of cancer that is in, our American life. So while we think that we're all still sitting around and debating, like we're all like Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine and all these people like debating over what we think the country should be, it's really, this other group that is trying to steer us in these directions that we shouldn't go into, and really taking a lot of really immense measures to make sure that we go in the direction that they want us to go in. So with that said, I'm thinking about racism and mainly about where most of us think that the problem began, or where most of us go to, which is the Civil War, which is kind of both a clean slate type of event and also a catalyst type of event. But was it fought over slavery? Was it fought over states' rights? Blah, blah, blah. I think saying states' rights is really just kind of being way too technical about something that was obviously about slavery. And I think, again, this was the people versus the cancer. Ultimately, did everybody know why everybody was doing what? No, but I think that's ultimately what it was. And we see, Abraham Lincoln, who had a pretty short-lived career. They got rid of him fast, and they tried to undo what was done. I mean, so I think in light of that, that was maybe an unplanned thing that sort of, crept in. I think get around our human plans without overriding our will, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole nother video. So now that I'm understanding that the political climate has pretty much always been what it's always been, this whole idea about party switching and all this nonsense. No, that first of all, parties don't switch. That would literally mean that they switched over one issue. That doesn't even make any sense. Why would you switch a whole party over one issue? I can see one issue going from one party to another, but why would you go? Because I mean, look, the Democratic Party has always been about the same things. The Republican Party is the newest party. It's just so dumb. Anyway, so I'm saying all that to say I'm trying to envision what that period would have looked like economically and socially, politically, what that would have looked like. And so I'm thinking about, well, who had the biggest stake in the conflict, which obviously would have been the slaveholders. And when you look at today, I mean, we're dealing with another country split type of event. And, where the country, people are thinking about seceding and all of this stuff, which, probably won't happen, but it's definitely reached a fever pitch with the feelings. Now, when you look at the country, a lot, there's a spectrum of people who are passionate, and we have to assume that it was the same thing back then. There were people who were just like, listen, I'm just trying to live my life. There are people who are like, this evil can't stand anymore. There were some people who were just trying to get that money and all of that. So you've got the slaveholders. Now, these people, there's not a lot of them. A lot of people like to say that. 1 or 2% of the population. What would that look like today? That would look like Jeff Bezos. That would look like Bill Gates. That would look like Elon Musk. It's like, and would these people have been well known? Maybe, probably. The names, probably. I mean, I don't think Vanderbilt was a slave owner. He probably was. I don't know. I think he was later. I think he made his money a different way. But I mean, these would have been names that people would have known. So we're talking about a similar situation of well-known people. And think about Bezos and Gates and, all these people owning slaves, having these vast, plantations and being these captains of industry with these slaves. which would also mean like, and this kind of blew my mind when I thought about it. I was like, imagine being a slave of one of these people and having your last name be Bezos just because you're a slave, because they had the same names. These belonged to families. Like it wasn't that they had corporations. I mean, essentially, I guess that's what it was, but they belonged to families. When people in those families died, they inherited people. They inherited slaves. So your name would just be like, you know, Dante Bezos. Like, and would you at that time be tempted? I don't even know if it would be a temptation. Like, would you not have a certain amount of pride in that? Being someone who belongs to Bezos. You probably had a certain amount of status. So this thing is complicated. And then I'm thinking, okay, and who would have been the people, who would have been the lobbies? Because there are the politicians, the lobbies, all that stuff, all that existed. Who's basically controlling the government? The rich guys back then. Who's controlling the government? So these people are telling the political party of their choice what to do. My guess, the Democrats, because the Republican Party is a new party. None of the rich people are about that Republican life. They hate the Republicans because they're changing everything about their wealth. Um, so these people would all be on the Democrat side. All of these rich, influential people trying to get their agendas done in Washington so that they can maintain their status quo. They don't care about the little person. As long as the little person keeps buying from them, they don't care. Um, they are in the 1%. Okay. So basically, you can bet that whatever the politicians that are equally as hungry to be rich uh, are running after them and trying to get their favor, trying to gain their favor, pretty much everything that's coming out of the government could essentially be coming out of these rich people's mouths at that time. So, what is the government saying? The government is saying that now that slavery is over, we need a new way to classify everybody to make sure that we understand who's the black people and who's the white people. We need to establish, what is considered black, which they decided that it was down to the, one great grandparent. If you had one great grandparent who was in slavery, you were still considered black. If you were 1/8 black, you were black. So they knew who to discriminate against in this new society. So did the people was this people at their city council meetings going, we need to keep the blacks? No, no, no. This was coming out of the government. So pretty much any laws that were established after slavery were by Democrats, were probably coming from the people at the time who really ran the country, which was not the government. And the government really doesn't have any business making decisions like that, like we see today, where it's just like, why are you in our business like this? So basically, the racism that I'm not denying happened was perpetuated by the government. For what purpose? I don't know. These weirdos that want to keep everybody down and divided, I mean, they exist. I have no idea why they want us at each other's throats, but they do. It just helps them get away with what they need to get away with, apparently. So basically, what I'm understanding is that there was a lot of effort that went into creating the racial divide that we still enjoy, for lack of a better term. A lot of energy went into keeping that up. I believe that a lot of that stuff would have relaxed way earlier if the government hadn't insisted on being involved. And it's really a shame because there were times in history where the people were divided, but they were, we probably had the most in common at that time than we ever did. And I'm kind of like, I'm kind of divided on that issue of, should we all have sort of blended into one race? I don't think that that's necessarily, I like the fact that we have, different ethnicities and we used to have these very rich cultural neighborhoods. I think it would be super cool if we could still, go to one side of town that was Greek and one side of town that was Irish and one side of town that was Chinese and one side of town that was Cantonese. I mean, there's plenty of land. I think that would have been super cool. I think we would have gotten it figured out. We don't necessarily have to blend and become this other thing. But I kind of go back and forth on that. I can understand if you read a lot of things back in the day, there's a lot of people who just thought, we need to just be American and leave all this stuff behind. And I can understand why they would think that, especially if you have the government tugging at your strings and using the media and using all of these things to make it seem like you just can't get along and you need government to help you figure this all out. So that's what I was thinking about today. And it's hard for me to go into that whole racism isn't real thing. I should give it a different title because it's really a long thing. I think I did touch on it on the second to last video that I left. But basically, there's two kinds of people and only two, and racism is not a thing. And basically, it could be explained by, first of all isms are evil, and you should just first of all, if you're really honest with yourself, anytime somebody says an ism, you're like, okay, what is that exactly? And you got to go through all of your myriad definitions of isms to remember what it's even referring to. So this is a word that's not even helpful. It doesn't define anything. It makes it harder to process information. So this isn't language we're dealing with. This is some weird word spell shit that they're trying to do. These aren't words. Racism, Band-Aidism, saltism, coffeeism. I mean, I'm just saying random things around my house because that's what it is. It's a lazy way of, not lazy, but for them, it's something where it's an umbrella. They can put anything underneath it so that they can just have power over you. But what I think most of us understand when people refer to racism is they're talking about a conflict between people with different cultures and who have different cultures and therefore have different value sets. And also people make assumptions, all that stuff. That's all just human nature things that we already have words for. I mean, jealousy, being annoyed, like we don't need isms for these things. Eventually, you're going to meet somebody of a different race, and if you don't get along, then that's where it ends. If you get along, you're going to become friends. If you become friends, there's going to be conflicts. There's going to be conflicts. Like, what are we doing? Why are we raking ourselves over the coals over something that's never going to not be there? My husband is the closest person to me and is also a different race from me. We fight. I don't say we fight all the time, but we have had huge arguments to the point where I'm like, I am considering killing you and I would be justified. Was it a race crime? No. Even if we weren't the same race, that's what it would be like because that's relationships. That's the closest relationship that I have. So at best, you're going to be at each other's throats at some point. Like, it's just so ridiculous. Anyways, racism isn't real. The other thing I was going to say was that this critical race theory is just so demonic and terrible because it is the worst parts of humanity. It's the worst parts of us, wrapping it all up in a package, and then I don't know why, but I just got in my brain that it was like subprime mortgages. It's like a subprime mortgage. It's all the worst things. They wrap it up in a thing, and then they give it like an A plus rating and wrap it up with a bow and say that it's great. It's not. It's a turd. This critical race theory is basically um, bitterness and cynicism and laziness and vindictiveness um, turned into virtue and love and acceptance and um, these virtues that are really hard to get, the hardest virtues to get. It's really dumb and terrible. And I was watching, not watching, I was listening to a Reddit. I don't know if anybody is on Reddit, but I'm obsessed with Reddit. Um, I use it a lot I write books, so I do a lot of research, and I like to research human nature, people doing human nature things. So it's really interesting to listen to it, and I get a lot of ideas. But I am just generally just an interested person in just hearing what people have to say about stuff. And I was listening to a Reddit, and it was about uh, what women find attractive that men may be embarrassed about, or something like that. And a lot of it was just about, I mean, the main thing, probably number one, was like showing emotion and not just like crying, but like showing a range of emotion. And basically getting at the idea that um, a guy who shows a range of emotion is someone who is not ashamed of showing that and has a certain level of confidence. And I saw in the comments where a guy was like, "Yeah, all these women saying this are imagining attractive men doing this." And then there was like a ton of comments, a ton of like dudes in the comments being like, "Yeah, they're just like." Wait until like your ugly coworker tries to do this or blah blah blah. And I realized, like, once you take it out of the element of race, then you can see clearly, or a little more clearly, because I think, for obvious reasons, are very clouded when it comes to race. But like, if it's basically the same thing. It at its that's what critical race theory is. Is this guy saying, yeah, but if the guy wasn't attractive, you would hate it. And to which my response to it is, like, when you're not thinking about racism and the history, blah, 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 when you're just listening to someone say that, my response to that was like, okay, so, but what you're telling me is you have this view of women that they are, they don't, they're just cynical people who think that women are shallow, and that it's like pretending to have this hidden knowledge and this it's like, okay, fine, you believe that, but you also want one. So this is a conflict. Like, people can feel that coming off of you. And then they can also feel when you're hiding that to get the thing that you want. And then you're like upset. And then, like, when you don't get the thing that you want, then that just proves that women are the way that you think that they are. But it's like you just said, like, this is how women are. And yet I'm going to try to get one. So you go out with that, you don't get one, and then the mask is slips right off, and then you flip the switch. Now you are solidifying what women think in their minds about you and your ilk. So you just hurt a lot of other men in the process by being a jerk. I'll just use the word jerk. And the other thing I was thinking was like, okay, you have to like get over that. You have to now, let's say that that's true. You have to now just be yourself in the world. which you're afraid to do because you might not get the thing that you want. So you have to let go of that and just be the person that you should be. We're constantly telling men to be themselves. They're constantly not believing what we say. We're not saying be yourself because it will get you the thing that you want. We're saying be yourself because that's the best thing to do to end up where you need to end up. And that is the truth. Like, it's the truth. You can't get this stuff any other way. And the other thing is, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe we are thinking of attractive dudes doing all of this stuff. But is the guy attractive because, is it because the guy's attractive? Or is it because that attractive guy is going through the world, is moving through the world in a different way? He has the confidence to be himself and he has the confidence to show a range of emotions because he knows he's attractive and whatever he does is going to be great. Okay, you don't get to do that. You're a little bit, down in the spectrum. You have to work to earn that confidence. He doesn't. You're mad because you have to work. That's all this is. You're mad because you can't get what that guy over there can naturally get. Like, are you just going to wither and die? You can't do that. Yeah, it's like people are just mad at the way the world is structured. You're just mad at God. You're mad at God. You're mad at reality. It's like God made you like this, or God made you with, your metabolism slower than everybody else's. Why? I don't know. Maybe God made you like that. Maybe it's your genetics. Maybe it's something they're putting in the water. Who knows? But they're doing better than you are. So now you got to do extra work. They don't have to do anything. And now you're upset. You're upset because when you do things, people think you're a predator. And when an attractive guy over there does things, they think he's great. They give him awards. It's like you're complaining about something that has been since the beginning. Like, that just shows you don't have enough. There's not enough things to do around here. There's not enough to do around here because now you're complaining about the very fabric, the atoms that make up the world. You've got too much time. So I think the CRT is kind of the same thing, but it's also being pushed, it's being peddled, it's being industriously circulated, as they would say in Pride and Prejudice. So this is things that they are working at. They've been working at it for years. Otherwise, this is not something that people would naturally really conclude. I think it has its origins in, I used to say that this was Black people, because it's very. Anytime I listen to CRT, I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm at home because this is basically like going to see your family in Michigan every day is basically what CRT sounds like to me. But honestly, I'm coming to the conclusion that, this was infiltrated. That whole idea was infiltrated probably for decades and probably in the churches, because I just watched a thing the other day about how Marxism infiltrated, the African American churches. And I'm like, yep, that's what it is. That's what it is, because you can tell who got that Marxist leaning on the gospel and who didn't, and what it does to that person. So we didn't get the Marxist training. I think my mom did not, and my dad did, and that has basically chosen a lot of their trajectories. Because once you get that Marxist spin on the gospel, and it goes unchecked, it just goes wild and becomes this nonsense thing that hasn't helped anybody in decades. Like, how could the Marxist doctrine be better if it hasn't helped anything? All it has helped do is erode something that existed that is stronger and better. Like, how is that progress? Anyway, so this is about as rambly as I thought it was going to be. But I don't think, I won't say that I couldn't have done better, but no, yeah, I think when it's fresh, it's better. So I just had to get that off my chest, and hopefully that makes sense to somebody. And if it doesn't, I'm sorry. And y'all have a blessed day.